Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and today, for the first time, I've asked Campbell Olsen, the Executive Director of North Stawell Minerals, to come and have a chat to us about what they're doing down in Victoria in the Stawell Gold Corridor. Now, their ASX code is NSM, and I don't think they've been talking about the story much, but I've twisted his arm, got him on the program today. So sit back, tuck your ears back, and let's go and hear what they've got to say. Campbell, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Kerry. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, your executive director, I just mentioned that it's in this Victoria, the Stawell, I guess the Stawell Gold Corridor. I'm wearing my gold jacket for you, Campbell.
Okay.
Now, you've got tenements, from what I've read, from Stawell to Matoa, which is about 60 kilometres. That's
Yep.
massive. So I guess before we get into the detail, just tell my beautiful audience who you are, like not who Campbell is, who's North Stawell Minerals.
North Stawell Minerals is a pretty much purely exploration play. It was originally part of the Stawell Gold Mines, and
Okay.
our organisation acquired the Stawell Gold Mines back in 2017, along with these massive exploration tenements to the north. Now, in those days, I'm still currently the asset manager, investment manager of Stawell Gold Mines as another hat. We were focusing on restarting the Stawell Gold Mines. We didn't really have an appetite that our investment syndicate didn't have an appetite for step out exploration work and expenditure. So we spun those out and listed them and raised 20 million bucks some years ago now, and put its own independent team, and off we went. And we've been covering that 500 square kilometre plus ever since, with a whole lot of very technical and detailed work. We haven't talked about it much because there was a lot of work to be done. So that was the genesis of it. What do we mean by the Stawell Corridor? Well, there's two faults that run up about 15 k's apart, right up Victoria. And that was originally the edge of Gondwana land, and it was a sea. So there was a lot of volcanic activity in those days, and the volcanoes would spew out lava and it would come down and hit the sea, get these big bullnose things, and all the way along that corridor. And so what we refer to now as basalt domes it's actually lava.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually lava is what it is. And then it faulted away. So we've got this really clean corridor. And when you get the X-ray out and have a look at it, and the geologists will be killing me for saying that, you have a look at the lava under the dirt and the farms and all that sort of stuff, you can clearly see where the Stawell Gold Mines is on we call it the Magdala lava dome or basalt dome.
Okay.
And then when you look north, you see repeats of these Magdala domes all the way up that corridor, not to the left, not to the right, just up that corridor. And so we asked the question.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say the Magdala, why do you call it Magdala?
Oh, that's 150 years old, that name.
Okay.
That was named back in the early days, the early prospectors and gold miners. That Magdala area, that Stawell area, has produced now about 6 million ounces of gold in various forms, of which Stawell itself, the modern Stawell, since 81, has produced nearly 3 million ounces. And is still producing, and I can see, another 40 years, I guess. It's just limited to how much we want to continue following these gold lodes.
So the Stawell Gold Mine is separate from North Stawell Minerals. How does that, just explain that to us?
Yeah, they are. North Stawell was spun out as a separate public company. Now, the owners of the Stawell, the syndicate that owns the Stawell Gold Mines, also owns a minority position in North Stawell Minerals.
Okay. So why was it spun out?
At that time, when we were focusing on restarting the mine had been shut down by Kirkland Lake. And we believed that there was a big future for it. So we acquired it from Kirkland Lake and invested a lot of money in restarting it. It took us 12 months. And that was our main focus. And we had these tenements sitting there in the portfolio. And it came a time where we decided, well, we need to do something with it, because some of them were coming up for maturity, relinquishment under the rules, all that sort of stuff. So we put this plan together to create a separate exploration company, and we decided to take it public. and broaden the shareholders. And we, as I said, we raised $20 million, and off we went.
When was that? When was the 20 mil raised?
Just on 4 years ago.
Okay. And what have you been doing? Sorry for all the questions, but I just want our audience to understand fully. So this is all part of that whole Magdala area, but you've spun off that sort of away from the mine, I guess, the mining area. You said, let's spin this off. We think that this is, part of the same trend, if you like. Would that be correct?
Yeah, well, you asked the question, if the Stawell Gold Mines in the Magdala basalt or lava has gold all over it, and then you look through the magnetics up the corridor, and there's all these 20 or 30 more of these lava domes. Is there any reason that gold wouldn't be on the rest of those domes? And we couldn't find a reason why not.
Okay.
The only reason that no one knew about it was because the lava, what we call daylights, comes out at the surface at a place called Big Hill in Stawell, and it started weathering down, and that's where the gold rush started there.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then when you go a bit further north, only a couple of kilometres north, you get all the farmland, and that covered those domes with 100, 150 metres of dirt, basically. It's the Murray-Darling Basin silt, effectively. So it's great for growing crops. Gets a bit sticky in the winter, but you haven't been able to see below it until, the last decade. And so because it didn't really daylight up that corridor, no one even thought to look for gold there. So we're the first to have gone and done it. And sure enough, we've found gold all the way up and down the corridor in various bits and pieces. We've been looking for what we call pathfinders or indications of gold. We look for bismuth and arsenic and a range of different things that are generally associated with the gold at Stawell. And we did a whole heap of things, getting back to your question, soil sampling and all sorts of geochem work and all sorts of geophysics works right across the corridor. And the result was, well, hell, there is a lot of gold sitting there, in an identical fashion to what it is at Magdala.
Victoria's been in the news a bit lately. Some challenges there. What is it like? Because you mentioned farmland and you mentioned cover. As an explorer or as an exploration play, because my audience out there, they're looking at opportunities. And as I said at the start, this is the first time that you've come out and spoken about what you're doing. But what's it like working down in Victoria? Is it supportive? What are the challenges that you've got at the moment, if any?
Look, we don't really have a lot of challenges. It's a tight regulatory environment, because you're in a pretty densely occupied space as opposed to, outback West Australia, for example.
Yeah.
Where there's no one around. And that's fine, you accept that. But we really haven't had any issues whatsoever. We have a high degree of community engagement. There's been a lot of good work done through the Stawell Gold Mines, and we share a community team. North Stawell and Stawell share the same community team. And North Stawell is actually based on the mine itself, right next door, to our Stawell Geological Department. And we have access to all of that IP. And Stawell's been terrific in that, they've helped us a lot with the community engagement, our systems, processes. They've opened up their entire IP, all their databases on all of the all of the Stawell Gold Mines, since 1981. And that's an ongoing process that we have at Stawell, where we're reconstructing the last 45 years of lost data.
Right.
Which has been terrific. And that then gets fed in, and our North Stawell geos are part of that process. It's like an underground laboratory for our guys, the North Stawell guys. They can just go down and have a look at the mineralisation that we're searching for.
Wow.
Because we have 330 kilometres of tunnels under Stawell around this Magdala lava. So that's given us a real head start.
Did you just say 330 kilometres?
Yep.
Holy moly, this is a big operation at Stawell Gold Mine.
Yeah, we've got 300 full-time employees there. We run 24/7.
Okay.
Have done for 6 years now. And it's good. It's great.
All right.
Very, very satisfying investment and process.
Well, speaking of investment and process, with North Stawell, you just mentioned the fact that you can go in, your guys can go in, they can look at what's happening at the Stawell Gold Mine. Does that give you a considerable advantage? In other words, I guess what I'm trying to pick out here, Campbell, is this just more of the same as the Stawell Gold Mine, but just further along the trend, if you like? Is that
It's looking that way. It's looking that way. Every time we do our exploration work, and particularly our drill programs, we sort of we sit back and we have a look and we map it against what we know at Magdala, and it's incredibly similar. So we kind of think when we've, for example, we went through some visible gold in our diamond hole at Darlington a couple of weeks ago, and then we compared it to the historic workings at the Magdala since 81, and it's allowed us to understand what we think we've got. So that then allows us to target and focus the rest of our programs coming up to confirm or deny that. And rather than just randomly throw holes in all around the place, you've got a map, you've got a blueprint, treasure map as I call it, to compare against. And only with a couple of holes, 3 or 4 holes, we now have a very good understanding of what we think we're onto. For example, at Darlington, there was an old mine there, and it shut down. It was in the late 1800s. Pardon me. But it was quite anomalous for us to go through this visible gold recently on the way to the basalt or the lava. And once we got some more data, we mapped it against a deposit at Stawell called Mariners, and it looks identical to Mariners. And Mariners historically operated for 30 years, and it produced 1 million ounces at 30 grams.
At 30 grams, not 3.
30
at
grams.
30.
No, at 30. Yeah. That's back. That was in the late 1870s. Now we still operate in part of the Mariners today. We have some areas at Stawell Gold Mines where we operate in, but it's looking remarkably similar. And that's given us a real advantage. And we can map everything we've got against the index, if you like, or the treasure map of Stawell Gold Mines.
All right. So tell me what you've currently got. As you said, you raised the money, you've done some work, you've done some exploration. What I want to find out is I'm talking to you, gosh, nearly June 2025.
Yeah.
What have you got? What's got you excited? And I guess what can investors look for as we go forward in terms of your strategy? How are you going to create that, what I like to call shareholder value going forward?
Okay, well, look, we're looking for repeats of the Stawell. If I could find another half a Stawell, that'd be great. And I wasn't
just a half.
Yeah, just half. That would give me 25 years of production, right? But our early work, we identified 18 or 20 potentially mineralised domes, which is way too many. So we got target-rich environment, right? We're a small company focusing on sort of really identifying the most attractive of these ones. So, we like things like Darlington and Wildwood because, we know a lot about them now and they're close to the mine. So we've entered an MOU with Stawell Gold Mines for future processing. If and when we can build a mine or a quarry, if you like, Stawell will find the capacity, subject to commercial terms, down the track to process for us. So that significantly cuts our development time. If you think, from the day you put a hole into the day you produce a gold bar, let's call it 20 years.
Wow.
That cuts it down by a huge order of magnitude that time. So, providing
and cost.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And cost. And particularly from an environmental perspective and a processing perspective and all that sort of stuff. We have a great asset there. And I think we're one of the very few explorers in Australia that has an agreement. There's a couple, but not many. Everyone would like one with a producer to produce, but Stawell runs at capacity at the moment. But the mine itself has done a PFS on plant expansion, so there will be room in the future for local miners, to batch their stuff through. So I think that's a huge economic advantage. And the fact that Darlington, for example, is only 6 kilometres away,
Wow.
That's and a very supportive community. And the early work on Darlington is looking very interesting. I'm excited by it.
What
And
excites you about it?
sorry.
What excites you about it?
Oh, look, it's looking like a repeat of the Stawell Gold Mines. It's a
Huge.
smaller, it's smaller, and we need to do a lot more work. But Mariners is exciting because it's up at the surface, and when you look at, if you think the main Magdala dome is underground, a
Yep.
couple of hundred meters underground, and what happens is these deep faults channel all these fluids up. They come rushing up from way down, and they're carrying gold, they're carrying copper, they're carrying arsenic, all that sort of stuff. They come up and they hit this lava, and it's a bit hard, as you'd be aware, and so it sprays around it. And if it's still got energy, it looks for any further cracks and goes to the surface.
Okay, got it.
So as it comes up to the surface, it's left the dome behind. It's coming up to the surface, and it spreads out all around the place and goes out through, and cools, and pressure goes off and it solidifies. So above the actual work we're doing right now and the history of Stawell are these things we call splays, which are big areas that are open pittable, and they
Yep.
were open pit mined years ago. They've all now been filled in. But what we're seeing at Darlington is a basalt dome. We know it's there. We've hit it a couple of times, and we know there's some good mineralisation on it. And all of a sudden, we're seeing these splays almost go up, almost identical to what happened at Stawell. So that's a good place to start. And if it is anything like Mariners, well, I mean, I'd take 1 million ounces at 30 grams any day.
So would I. So is that because you said just a minute ago, sometimes these things take 20 years. How far down the track do you think, like, give us an idea of what, I guess, how quickly you could get into maybe early stage production, given the fact, if the commercial terms work, you've got the Stawell Gold Mine literally just down the road.
Oh, look, I'd have to look into the crystal ball for that one. If you want to lend me your crystal ball, that's fine. I wouldn't be in gold mining if I had your crystal ball.
Yeah, well, maybe, but is it,
Oh,
yeah.
look, there are, number one, we have to firm up a economically viable deposit. That'll probably be in the next sort of 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
I would have thought. We've got a good long-term or medium-term, short and medium-term plan.
Yep.
And we're going to focus on that because we think there's plenty of others. Our geologists would like to focus on other things, and we're sort of saying, well, hang on a second, this is close. We understand a lot about it.
Yeah.
Let's get to the bottom of it, check the economics. And then it's a matter of going through the regulatory system. And people, we have not had an issue, a day's issue in the last decade with the regulatory system here in Victoria. Once you're inside, you're inside. We're good corporate citizens.
Okay.
And they're making big strides, and certainly in recent times, they are making big strides at improving the processes and fast tracking things. Not so much fast tracking, but getting things done more quickly and more thoroughly and more definitively.
Okay.
And it's a really positive thing. And the government is doing a great job. ERV is doing a terrific job at sort of, reorienting that department to more, mining extractive industries friendly. And that's an ongoing program. And the results so far, particularly in the last year, I think, have been terrific. So that only bodes well. There are changes coming up in that system, primarily designed to ease or smooth the process and make it easier for these industries to develop, particularly where we are, which is in rural Victoria. And the government is very keen on supporting rural economics because it's really only farmland there. And so they're very positive in that sense. So we need to go through that process. I would like to think, maybe I'm dreaming here, but I'd like to think within 5 years we can be digging dirt.
Okay.
But it all depends.
Yeah. There's a lot of things around that. Don't worry, Campbell. We're not going to hold
stage gates, as my investors love to say. Everything's got stage gates. Don't worry.
I got it there.
All of them might not.
Well, listen. What I want to find out now is I want 3 reasons from you as to why investors should be sitting up and taking notice of you. And by the way, Campbell, I also want to say, ladies and gentlemen, This is the first time he's come out and spoken about North Stawell Minerals. So if you haven't heard about them before, go check them out. Do your own research. Reach out to the company themselves. This is not financial advice. I just want you to know. All of these things, this is early stage exploration. And as Campbell just said, it takes time. But I think one of the advantages they've got is they're in that same area as the Stawell Gold Mine, which is an operating gold mine. They can use some of their infrastructure. I think that there's some very interesting things, and potentially, I think your market cap's what, about 10 mil from so a market cap of 10 mil, a little bit of cash in the bank. So, and that I guess relationship with Stawell Gold Mines means that it's a very interesting time for North Stawell Minerals. But over to you, Campbell. Give us
Three things. Now, number one, their GeoVic came out some time ago and said, "Oh, there's 30 million ounces of gold in Victoria left." And I just think that's nonsense. Right? That is absolute nonsense. You know, we haven't even scratched the surface in Victoria.
Oh,
everywhere we look, you know, particularly at Stawell and up and down the corridor, we're running into gold. Right?
okay.
And you know, it has a massive future in Victoria. And as you know, they're large deposits, they're good grade, top quartile grade. You only have to see, you know, Southern Cross didn't exist a number of years ago, and you know, look at the hits they're getting. You know, and
Very good point, actually. Where are they in relation to you?
oh, they're towards Bendigo, so they're about 150 kilometres away. Different type of deposit,
Right.
But you know, they have the sort of narrower vein, higher grade. We have the large disseminated with some high grades.
Okay.
And the characteristics of our deposits is they just go forever. You
Okay.
just keep turning through them. You know, you get your 3, your 4, your 5 grams a ton. You know, you can make a lot of money on that. So there's plenty more gold to be found, and it is generally underexplored in Victoria. You know, the Victorian East Coast gold industry basically shut down because you could hear with the discovery of Kalgoorlie, and if you put your head out the window, you could hear the cash flying over to WA away from the east. So it's been underrepresented.
Yep.
Number two, look, we spent a lot of time getting our technical ducks in a row, you know, and understanding the deposit and putting the effort and the work in to have good systems and processes and target. For example, you know, we've worked closely with CSIRO, and we even get an R&D grant for it. But they go through with their simulation modelling now, and they simulate when we give them our magnetics. They go through and simulate where the fluids would have come up and gone around all these deposits, where they're more likely to have deposited. So rather than go out and put 100 holes across the thing, they say, well, it's going to be in this area if it's going to be. So in our last program, we tested that theory for the first time. There was a right to the west, 150 metres, a couple of hundred metres out of Darlington. We were there. So we dropped the hole into that notional target. If you like, it's a computer-generated target. I wouldn't say it's AI, but it's computer-generated. And we jagged the corner of it and ran sort of 6 grams. And, you know, it wasn't spectacular, but for me, it was fantastic because this allows us to save a hell of a lot of money if we can find this stuff as effective and target from day one.
Okay.
So you're not going out and... So, you know, we've got all that sort of stuff. So we've kept a fairly low profile while we build up something to talk about. You know, it's also cheap. I think it's cheap.
Of course you do.
At 10 mil. And we're not seeing yet this gold price trickle down, as you'd be aware.
Yes.
We're not seeing it trickle down through the various, you know, food parts of the food chain.
Yep.
And we're at the bottom, of course, as explorers.
Yeah.
And we've certainly seen a lot of uptick in interest in the Stawell operation because it's producing. But I think it's inevitable that it will trickle down. You know, if these prices sustain, and I think they will sustain, and I think they'll potentially even go higher. So it will come down to all explorers. It'll filter through, but it'll go to the better ones first who've got their stuff together.
And of course, you are one of the better ones.
I'm just going to add a fourth in for you.
Oh, he's a cheeky boy. All right,
yeah, cheeky.
all right.
You know, it's really important not to underestimate the co-location with SGM and the intellectual property and all the knowledge and the databases and the history that North Stawell has access to.
Okay.
because we are looking for repeats of what they're mining, and we're finding them.
Okay.
And we know what we're looking at, and that gives us a massive head start to just going out blind and drilling in a paddock.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so when we know how the gold is formed on these domes, so we go out, and we target specifically based on all that intellectual property and that knowledge and that history, and it works for us.
Well, I
Really
guess
well.
you better come back every now and again and tell us how things are going along. And as Campbell just said, they've got a market cap of 10 million. They are, what I think I'm saying this right, a lookalike to the Stawell Gold Mine. Pretty interesting times. It is a lot of gold down in Victoria, and they are very amenable to mining. Just have a look at what Southern Cross Gold have done for their shareholders. Not a lookalike, very, very different, but the times they are changing. First time that Campbell's come out and had a chat with us on Making Money Matter. So go check it out, ladies and gentlemen. ASX code, as I said at the start. NSM, North Stawell Minerals, Campbell Olsen. Thanks so much for joining me today on Making Gold Matter, we'll say.
Thanks, Kerry. Appreciate it.